Okay, so let's get started.
This is question 9 of the final 50. How do you handle stress or pressure? With stress or pressure, my natural instinct was not always to pause and assess before I acted, but it's a learned skill. And with pressure, it has a way of making everything feel equally urgent when it truly isn't. So I learned over time to really pause, reflect on what the priorities are, or even if it's mid meeting, really pausing to understand where someone's coming from or what the next course of action should be. That's where maturity comes in and really helping to lead through that lens.
Okay, good answer. There is no right or wrong answer here, but you don't want to overstretch your explanation. If the answer
Okay.
is good enough in 30 seconds, so it is. And while you gave the answer, you did not give any specific, actual way of how do you handle stress or pressure. For example, if I was answering it, I would say probably something like, I compartmentalize. I put some I block some time on my calendar so that I can, get some quality time to do some of the important pieces of work. And most importantly, obviously, I prioritize. I always understand what is critical that needs to go out immediately and what can be delayed and would not cause an impact. And that's how I manage it. Some some specific tidbits make the answer that much more accurate.
So with that lens, I went more on the pressure side. Is it sometimes better because you can get more personal to do the stress side, since that's kind of what you were doing to kind of help with the layout?
Yeah, I mean, pressure creates stress, right? So it's like it's connected. It's not usually I'm pressurized, but I'm not stressed. I'm stressed, I'm not pressurized. So it goes hand in hand. But it really doesn't matter. You can spin it both ways. It doesn't really matter. The point of the question is, this set that you're working on, these are very personality based questions. They are there to assess, help you create compelling answers that an interviewer can kind of, align behind.
Okay. The next one's on sprint, if I'm correct. No, feedback. Never mind. That it's two down. That
All
question
right.
11, not 10.
Okay. Let's listen to this.
This is question 10 of the final 50. How do you handle feedback or criticism? I'm not sure if you're like me, but feedback can be difficult to hear, especially when someone is critiquing your style. Early on in my career, I think back to a stakeholder telling me that my updates were way too thorough and difficult to act on. My first instinct was defensiveness because the thoroughness felt like a strength. But after sitting with it, I saw that as an area of improvement and allowed for me to provide better stakeholder updates in the long run. So that way, there was action that could be done through the updates I provided. This happens with any piece of feedback or critique, and it's really key to be able to take it with a grain of salt, but also to see, is there areas that I can improve on and get better at.
Okay. So again, the question was very straightforward. How do you handle feedback or criticism? The answer was supposed to be something where you explain what exactly, how do you handle it? What you did is you just spun the answer around and you put a negative on it, that I wasn't good at it and I started doing this and I, no, don't do that. Don't get defensive just because you're hearing the word feedback or you're
Okay.
hearing the word criticism. Remember, the way we tell that, when you are trying to work with your Scrum teams, you are improving the system. A retrospective is productive when you are working on ways to improve the system and there is no finger pointing. Same applies for you. How do you, react to feedback or criticism? I always pause, take a step back, understand the feedback. Is it helping me improve my ways of working, helping me govern better? And I take the feedback in and I make it a point to try to bring in those improvements. Not all feedback or criticism is usually helpful, but then I have learned over the years to filter out the just the random outburst versus something that is constructive and productive,
Okay. So always,
right?
it's like you've told me before, always spin it positive. Don't make it like
Yes.
as one more point for them to put on their list of why not to hire me.
Yes, yes. Don't, most importantly, I think, because you're on the tail end, I think you have just started overthinking. Don't overthink. Usually, such questions, your immediate first two reactions are the best ones to go with. Don't try to make it more complicated. Try to keep your answers simple and honest, right? I mean, I am giving you feedback, and sometimes when I give you criticism on how you're going through the program, what do? You don't go in a shell. You understand that the feedback is coming from an improvement point of view, and you incorporate those changes. You get better with time, right?
Right.
Okay, this is the third one you were
This
excited
is the
about.
one where I don't know how to discuss a sprint in brevity.
Okay, let's see. Let's see.
This is question 11 of the final 50. Can you walk us through a typical sprint from start to finish? When it comes to sprints or iterations, I'm used to 2 week sprints, but the planning is going to start with a refined backlog of 1 or 2 future sprints. But that happens through the stories meeting a definition of ready that the team has already deemed eligible and committed to. Now, I really help during sprint planning to pressure test the team, making sure that they're not having overcommitment and really looking at their capacity and providing that buffer for them. But I also am working during those weeks to use stand-ups as a blocker raise or impediment piece where we can talk about what's blocking us and not
Okay,
have it be a status meeting.
you are going in the right direction. There's this one pattern I'm noticing, right? And I don't know if I've given you this feedback before. You have five sentences in your mind and you want to kind of, speak them out. So you start speaking and you keep speaking till you run out of breath. And when you run out of breath, you have a very, you pausing at at a very weird spot. Catch your breath and then speak. Pace yourself. Be a little slow. Take the intentional pauses to catch your breath,
Okay.
but take those pauses at the right spot, right? Because so far what you're saying is making sense. The way you're saying it is, you can improve that. And I see, your pauses are coming when you're running out of breath versus at the right moments. So be a little mindful of that.
And I can really escalate things same day via Jira or whether it's some other pathway. I'm also using our sprint reviews at the end of the sprint or iteration for stakeholder review, and it's stakeholder facing with working software only. But retrospectives are the key, I feel like, driver for our team because that's where we get to discussing how do we improve, get better, and really working on some concrete actions, maybe 1 or 2 items, but that creates us momentum to really like drive and become better as a team.
Okay.
Wow, the amount of
Good
filler
answer.
words that I've used, I that kills me. I don't think I've done
Yeah.
that in a while. I think it's just I was trying to get it all in.
No, but otherwise, it's a good answer. This is one way to answer it. You have explained the entire flow of Scrum, but you have basically what you've done is you have explained all the events and the role of a Scrum Master in those events. And every second person would answer it the same way. What will make this answer more impactful if you quickly just summarize the events, but then you talk about everything else that you do behind the scenes
Okay.
that actually makes the sprint effective. For example, no two sprints are alike. beyond the usual cycles of going through planning and the daily stand-ups and the backlog refinements and the retrospectives and the sprint demos. I'm constantly working on the back end with the product owner to make sure that he is able to prioritize the backlog. If there are any blockers, I help get that removed. I also socialize a lot with our stakeholders to understand how are they feeling about the way the team is progressing, any feedback that's coming in that can help us improve, and so on and so forth, right? So these are all the value additions that you bring in as a Scrum Master that will add more impact, because 9 out of 10 people, when they answer, will talk about sprint planning, daily stand-ups, retrospectives, demos. So it becomes a pretty standard run-of-the-mill thing. You're just explaining the Scrum guide, but you can stand out when you just quickly run through the ceremony, but talk about the other things that you're doing that usually people do it, but they don't articulate it when asked for,
And that's the
right?
key that bumps you from that entry level to mid level or even senior,
Yes,
because of the fact that you see everybody does this, everybody's supposed to do this, but here are the actual things that make my role unique.
exactly.
Okay.
There you go, you got it. All right, let's look at the next one.
This is question 12 of the final 50. How do you ensure user stories are ready for sprint planning? Story readiness starts well before sprint planning. I work with my product owner and my team to establish a clear definition of ready. That's where the stories have a clear description, defined acceptance criteria, and even sizing
So
before stories are even
not a
eligible.
good place to introduce the definition of ready, because just like the definition of done, the definition of ready usually is a document that's created initially, and then the product owner sticks to it, right? So it's not something that happens with every story. So maybe not the best place to,
Okay.
or at least not the starting point for your answer.
Okay. I make sure that there are regular refinement sessions once each sprint is the standard, and sometimes it could be held twice depending on the maturity of the team. But I'm also helping the product owner on what acceptance criteria standards should look like, so that way our quality is improving over time. Now, a story, if it's not meeting the bar, it's not allowed into the sprint, and that's the standard, and that helps protect our sprint planning from becoming a discovery session or allowing for the sprint to just be a large spike into the story.
A very good answer. Very good answer. The first part was very loose. The second half was very tight, and that is where the value was. This answer, instead of a minute, if it comes down to say 40 seconds, because you remove all the fluff, will be very effective.
So if I just start talking about refinement sessions from that get go on, I'd be okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so this is fifth one.
Should be question 13 if it's
All right,
done in
let's look
order.
at this. Yes, there you go. Okay.
This is question 13 of the final 50. 30. What's your approach to backlog refinement when the product owner isn't very experienced? My approach comes down to where the product owner is struggling. If they're struggling with acceptance criteria and it being vague, I'm really coaching them in what a persona is and making sure that they're following the given when then templating. If they're struggling with prioritization, I'm giving prompting questions about what the business impact is, and if this is something that doesn't ship, how is it going to affect our customer? Now, I coach in the moment rather than taking over. I really make sure that it's not creating a dependency. And when it comes to refinement sessions, I might be facilitating a couple of times, but I'm really trying to help the team understand the standard and coach them along that way instead of just taking. Oops, I cut
What
it.
happened?
I cut it too soon.
Okay.
I cut
All
it too
right.
soon.
That's fine. So, in your last answer, you mentioned about, how backlog refinements happen once a sprint, but sometimes you do it more frequently. This is a good use case. If the product owner
Okay.
feels overwhelmed or challenged by the backlog, then one of the things is you'll have more frequent meetups so that he can, proactively be able to, he can just do a small set and refine and bring it forward. The other thing that you can do talk about is sometimes you might ask your tech lead to help the product owner with the technical elements of the story so that he gets some guidance and some clarity and there's accuracy in the stories that are being included. Acceptance criteria, I'm not a big fan. You don't want to put everything on the product owner, especially the acceptance criteria, because acceptance
Right.
criteria at the end of the day become a joint activity. The team also needs to participate in it. The product owner may have the bare skeleton of acceptance criteria written, but the team will add on to it when they groom the story. So that's not the best talking point for
Okay.
such an answer. All right.
Would it be better
Okay.
to, okay, is it sometimes that a product owner might still struggle though with vagueness and truly understanding the product? And if that's the case, then how do we help coach them along in that way? Are we helping them through understanding like that prioritization piece? Is that like what I had discussed, or is it a
So
different method?
ideally, there is a product management team. The product owner should be connected with the product management team, and he should be able to understand the product better from there. But you might also have, if the product owner is, let's say, your team's been steady, you've been working through and through, and the product owner has been replaced and a new one's coming in, you might already have some Jira and Confluence documentations that you can direct the product owner towards so that he can get some familiarity. Last solution could be where you or your tech lead again gives an overview of exactly what we do, what is the objective, who are we trying to cater, and things like those.
Okay. But that doesn't sound like a great use case for an interview question, so I wouldn't
Yeah.
talk about that. Okay.
Yes.
This is question 14 of the final 50. How do you balance agile practices with fixed deadlines or regulatory timelines? Fixed deadlines don't break agile. Agile is just a tool and a methodology that is helping to sharpen our delivery. Now, at Fidelity, we had a very hard deadline with our customer, and our requirements constantly were being added to by the stakeholders, even though we had a fixed date. So I worked with my product owner to really lock down what our MVP was and align that backlog so that way it was our filter for any new request. Now, anything outside of the priority.
So I think you broke the structure. Instead of giving the introduction right at the start, you are now, in between the answer, you're like trying to introduce exactly what it was doing. You messed up the structure of the answer. I think you're trying to build a blockbuster movie structure, but you kind of missing the steps and adding them later. That's what's making the answer a little off.
Prioritized
Okay.
backlog was sent to a post release or a next phase. And that really helped with that discipline for us to have a focused team and to ensure that we were delivering what we had promised and had working software.
Yeah.
It doesn't land.
How do you
It
manage?
doesn't.
Okay,
No.
let's listen to this question again.
This is question 14 of the final 50. How do you balance agile practices with fixed deadlines or regulatory timelines?
All right. So if there are regulatory timelines and we have clear understanding of what we need to deliver, usually I would work my way back from the timeline to understand exactly what we're trying to deliver and how much time do we need to deliver it. Usually at that point of time, I use techniques like PERT so that I don't engage the entire development team, but I'm still able to get a high level estimate. And I would then add some extra buffer on top of that so that I can build some flexibility in the plan just in case things don't pan out the way they do. And by usually doing these things, we are able to hit a timeline or a deadline based delivery. Which part of it have you not learned?
None. I've learned it all. I was gonna say. It's just
So why is it
I was trying to use
I mean,
blockbuster movie and it was in the wrong
yeah,
time.
yes, yes. So we speak a lot about how to build predictability in Agile, right? So this is one, I mean, you can never be 100% predictable, but this is a way of being predictable when you bring in these elements. And I such questions, I want you to be very vocal about PERT, because I would
Okay.
say everybody else before you would not have said PERT. I can guarantee you that.
I
So,
was gonna say
you know,
most people won't.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So please use that, because those are the brownie points that you want to bring in your answer.
Okay.
But yeah, this was the wrong this was not a situational question. You just you tried to put it in a situation, but this should have been answered just as a knowledge check. Cool.
So with the remaining questions, I know that some of them will be blockbuster movie approach. Do I don't need to force it. It's something with the blockbuster movie approach that I need to really think probably not even going towards 2 minutes anymore. It needs to be less, right? Getting kind of to that point, just building the story quickly. And I mean, I built sort of a story in a minute. So if I can do that, I can build a blockbuster movie in like a minute 15. So I do I need to think that these first couple are more knowledge checks anyways? And
No,
nope.
it's always
Okay.
a mix and match.
Okay.
The final 50 are the most complicated ones, though they are pulled from our mentees who have recently given interviews, but then that brings in that ambiguity of how would you answer it, right? So they are the most complex. Don't assume that the first five are going to be like that. You please take every question on its merit of what kind of an answer fits best, and then use it. And there are three styles, right? You're either doing knowledge check, or you're doing the blockbuster, or you're doing the standard star approach where you do not do that build up of blockbuster.
Okay.